Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now, and I'll be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC. Hope you're all having a good and restful weekend, and appreciate those 300 plus of you who are either staying up late or getting up early with us for this latest Falcon flight. Taking a look at Historic Launch Complex 39A, where you can see some pre-launch venting. Fairly typical for this point in the count. This is not the pre-chilling vent ahead of second stage LOXO. That'll come a little bit later on during the hour leading up to launch. Just about 58 minutes ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. I want to thank the folks that are making this coverage possible as we welcome you in on what to Star Wars fans is known as May the 4th be with you, or Star Wars Day. So for all those Star Wars fans out there, apologies to the Trekkies, but appreciate the Star Wars nerds among us who are getting up early or staying up late for this Falcon flight, of course, named for one of the most iconic vehicles in the Star Wars pantheon, the Millennium Falcon. I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast today. We've got most of the crew out to shoot this Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent from Pad 39A. Ron Bernstein out and about, making sure all the cameras here at the press site are in working order. Michael Caine shooting this launch off-site today. John Pisani has the day off. But if you're not following the fellows on their social channels, you can find them on X. Adam is at Aburn NYC. Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr. John is at John Pisani Photo. And you can always follow us here at Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, you can also find us on Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky. We'll also be joined with tracking assistance this morning by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. I also want to thank our moderators in the live chat for helping us out today. Thanks to Callistia Lee. And just scrolling to see if any of the other mods are up with us this morning. Might be Callistia holding down the fort solo, so we'll re-emphasize the rules of the chat to help make her job a little bit easier. Remember to converse in English, so it's easier for her and any of the other mods that joined this morning to do their jobs. Also, we ask that you do not delve into overt politics or religion. Refrain from using all caps. And most importantly, the golden rule: treat others as you would want to be treated. These live launch opportunities are made possible by our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like My Honey, Joni Mahoney, Sulfur for Lunch, KH, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and, of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Speaking of our channel member community, I want to thank Callistia for helping to expand our little collection here by gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Callistia. Thank you so much. And to our 5 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat. We hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Just about 52.5 minutes on the clock at this point in the countdown. SpaceX is working its way towards a liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, coming up at 4:54 a.m. Eastern. They do have a window that extends out till 8:40 a.m. Eastern, though, as long as they have not begun the fueling process on this Falcon 9 rocket. But once tanking gets underway, SpaceX is committing to a targeted T0 at that point, given its load and go style of fueling. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 60% chance for favorable weather at the beginning of the window. If things slide further on towards the back end, conditions drop down to just a coin toss as far as favorability for weather. Meteorologists are tracking the possible interference by the anvil cloud rule, the cumulus cloud rule, and the thick cloud layers rule. Essentially, there are some scattered showers and some thunderstorms that have been potentially popping around the area and could impact the launch today. A little hard to see given the lack of light in the wide shot, but stepping outside, it does feel fairly pleasant. A little bit of a breeze going on here at the press site. Hard to tell if there were a lot of clouds in the area, though, but it didn't seem too bad. I will stress, though, of course, that I'm not a meteorologist and I'm not the one to make a definitive call on that. We rely on the experts for that one. Got some cloud coverage rolling on in southern, or I guess central Brevard County, southern central. We've got our tracking team spread across the area, so working to provide you the best views of this Falcon 9 rocket launch. And so hopefully if one of our camera's viewpoints gets snuffed by clouds, we can pop over to another frame and allow you to continue seeing the Falcon 9 as it makes its ascent. As we're counting down to liftoff, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, the milestones that we're looking forward to as SpaceX prepares to let this Falcon fly. Generally speaking, the countdown process begins at the T-minus 38-minute mark. That's when the launch director will conduct the readiness poll. SpaceX does this electronically, so if it's in a good posture, this can happen a little bit early. But once the go-ahead for fueling is given, tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket begins at T-minus 35 minutes. Starts with Fueling starts at the 35-minute mark with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, cryogenic helium load begins on the booster. Same will happen on the upper stage a few minutes thereafter. A helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes, the second stage RP-1 tank is full. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process will begin. That's when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. We see this manifest here at pad 39A as the so-called big vent beginning at about T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. That'll last for roughly 4 minutes. Tapering off, preparation for that second stage LOX load to begin at the 16-minute mark. Rolling on T-minus 7 minutes is the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, and that'll help protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. Following pressurization of the system, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, with a strong back, reclines a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before flight. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff, coming up once again at 4:54 a.m. Eastern, 08:54 UTC, or just a hair under 46 minutes from now. Just about 44.5 minutes on the clock. Mentioned the weather just a little bit ago. Want to give you a view of the clouds that are shifting, coming from the Gulf and making their way eastward. You can see a little bit of cloud cover currently over Florida's Space Coast. Hopefully that sort of big pocket of clouds that's hovering over the Tampa Bay St. Pete area will make its way across the Florida Peninsula by the time that we're ready to launch, and that won't be too much of a hindrance. Falcon 9 rocket will be flying in a southeasterly trajectory. We'll talk a little bit more about the flight path here in just a few minutes. It has been a busy time here around the Florida Spaceport here at the Kennedy Space Center. Lots of vehicles coming and going. If you happen to check out our X account, you may have seen the video that our Adam Bernstein shot of the payload fairings that were cruising by the vehicle assembly building on their way out to one of SpaceX's pads for a future Starlink mission. Quite possibly this one, actually, because we saw them roll by on Friday, early Friday morning, and that would have given them enough time to integrate onto the rocket and roll out for this launch. So quite possibly the two are aligned. Also, some movement as far as the Artemis program is concerned, as stacking continues inside the vehicle assembly building in preparation for the Artemis 2 mission set for early next year, first crewed flight of the program. Taking a look inside with some photos shot and shared by NASA. This is the ICPS, or the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, the upper stage of the Space Launch System rocket powered by an RL-10 engine. This particular type of upper stage manufactured by United Launch Alliance in partnership with Boeing shares some heritage from the previously flown Delta upper stages, the Delta IV upper stage. This is the second out of 3 of these ICPSs that are set to fly in support of the Artemis program. The third and final one is set to be used on the Artemis 3 mission, which will propel that Orion spacecraft on its way to the moon to link up with SpaceX's human landing system version of its Starship rocket for the first crewed landing since Apollo 17 back in 1972. Currently, that mission is slated for 2027. Of course, that depends on the readiness of the Starship rocket to support that landing operation, as well as the readiness of the spacesuits that are being manufactured by Axiom Space. A lot of the hardware for Artemis 3, as far as the Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft, is well in work at this point, both at the Michoud assembly facility down in the New Orleans area, as well as here at the Kennedy Space Center. Here's an image of the ICPS being gently lowered to integrate with the rest of the SLS rocket. That conical shape that it's being lowered into is the LVSA, the Launch Vehicle Stage Adapter. This part of the SLS architecture was designed to change, currently still is designed to change, for the Artemis 4 missions and beyond, as that version of the Space Launch System rocket will use the Exploration upper stage, powered instead by 4 RL-10 engines instead of just the one you see here on the ICPS. If you take a look just outside the vehicle assembly building where this work has been ongoing, the Mobile Launcher 2, or the ML2, is currently under construction, which is designed to support the larger version of the SLS rocket. You can see just that tower of lights there on the right-hand side of that box. That's the ML2. As is unfortunately the case with a number of components with the Artemis program, the ML2 has been running years behind and quite a bit over budget, but construction now well underway to support, again, the SLS Block 1B version of that rocket. However, as I'm sure quite a number of you are well aware, with the rollout of the president's budget proposal on Friday, plans as desired by the White House are to cancel the SLS and Orion spacecraft programs beyond the Artemis 3 missions. So if the budget is adopted as suggested, or a version of it, that would mean that the SLS program would never actually see Block 1B come to fruition. TBD what would happen with all the hardware that's currently in flow, including the mobile launcher. We have a number of requests for information and comment on that out to various players, including Bechtel, the prime contractor behind the ML2. Still waiting to hear back. I'll let you know if we do. In the meantime, popping back over with things that are still in flow for missions that have not been proposed to be canceled. Taking a look at the Orion spacecraft and the European service module from the European Space Agency just beneath. Those were rolled out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building. As the last time we had a launch and we talked to you about this, the literal and metaphorical keys to Orion were handed over from Lockheed Martin to NASA as Exploration Ground Systems took over the Orion spacecraft and are bringing it through its paces before it's integrated onto the SLS stack inside the VAB. After leaving here, the O&C building, Orion was brought over just a little bit down the road to the multi-payload processing facility, where that readying process will continue. Fueling is on tap for the Orion spacecraft next inside the multi-payload processing facility, or the MPPF. Speaking of fueling, we're just about a minute away from the start of fueling on this Falcon 9 rocket here at Launch Complex 39A. At this point in time, assuming that the go-ahead for tanking of the Falcon 9 was given, propellant load is now underway on this Falcon 9 rocket. As we take a look at the base of the vehicle, just beneath the X in SpaceX, you can see where the gradient changes a little bit, and there's a slightly lighter shaded band that wraps its way around the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Right at that point is where we'll start to see a bit of a frost line form and some vapor as well in that area of the rocket as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage booster. Thankfully, we're not getting a whole lot of heat distortion tonight, so we've got a really nice, clear view of the booster stage. So it shouldn't be too difficult to tell when fueling has begun on this Falcon 9. and it's starting to become a little bit clearer now. We're just seeing the frost lines start to form there at the base of the booster, right in that pocket I was talking about. This is a good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway on this Falcon 9 rocket, which means they are keying into their T0 at 4:54 a.m. Eastern, 08:54 UTC. We're now T-minus 30 minutes in, counting to the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites on board. If you're just now joining us, you're watching live coverage of this mission designated Starlink 6-84. Coverage from Spaceflight now. Appreciate the 800 plus of you who are watching with us live in the early morning hours on a Sunday. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream. Lots more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. If you are just joining us at this point in the stream, SpaceX has begun fueling their Falcon 9 rocket there at Historic Launch Complex 39A. The start of tanking means that they are committing to a launch attempt at 4:54 a.m. Eastern, 08:54 UTC. I want to thank some folks in the live chat for your support this morning. Our thanks to channel member Rocket Profit for being a member with us for 28 months now. Saying time to sling some green and make some friends. Following that up by gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Rocket Profit. And thanks as well to Tobe Wobe for gifting 5 as well. So to our 15 newest channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Rocket and Tobe in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Also want to thank channel member My Honey for a $5 super chat, who says, good morning. At work for another 3 hours. Here is for coffee and tea, as it is early in the morning. Appreciate that and the kind words. And my goodness, 3 more hours at work on a Sunday. Hope your shift is going well. Also want to thank channel member KH for a $10 super chat. See the theme is persisting. KH says, for a little more hot tea, Will Robinson Smith. Hope that you're well, and greetings to all the team. Yes, doing well on a Sunday morning, as well as one can be at 4:27 in the AM here on the East Coast. And yes, do have a cup of the aforementioned lemon tea beside me. Actually, this morning in a Kennedy Space Center mug, so it's all quite fitting. Also want to thank channel member Michael McGrory for a $2 super chat, saying, all right, fueling is 29 Starlinks a record. And yes, as a matter of fact, this is the most number of the Starlink V2 mini version of the Starlink satellites that has flown in a single payload. Made possible by the fact that SpaceX has pivoted over to what it's calling the optimized version of the Starlink satellite. Take a look at the payload facts here. You can see the satellite weight difference between the optimized version of the V2 Mini and the previous version of the V2. About a 500-pound difference, or about 225 kilograms in weight. With their solar panels in full, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. Both versions use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were all built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. And these satellites today will be deployed at 180 miles or 291 kilometers in altitude. Will be deployed at a 43-degree inclination. Today's flight will be the 35th mission with Starlink satellites on board, the 34th dedicated Starlink flight. And that's because the Starlink 13-1 mission earlier this year did carry 2 Starshield satellites as a rideshare. Taking another view at the Starlink V2 minis and their launch configuration following the deployment of the payload fairings, but before the Starlinks were deployed. These had a nice bit of sun on them, so good illustration of what the optimized Starlinks look like. Compared to their now quite a bit older predecessors, the Starlink version 1.5 satellites, the V2 minis have 4 times the capacity. They introduced E-band for backhaul. They featured an upgrade phased array antenna. Compared to the Starlink version 1.5, they're 2.6 times heavier, and replaced the Krypton Hall thrusters with argon Hall effect thrusters. Here's an image of what the V2 minis look like in their on-orbit configuration with their solar panels deployed. Starlinks that are on this particular Falcon flight are not the direct-to-cell variant, but here's an artist's rendering of what those look like as shown in the T-Mobile Super Bowl commercial, and one again from the Japan-based telecommunications company au. Before we hit the so-called big vent, I want to go ahead and take a moment just briefly to talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket will be flying once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket lifting off from historic launch complex 39A will be flying in a southeasterly trajectory once it does leave the pad. The first stage booster, tail number B1078, will target its 20th touchdown after a jaunt to space and back, looking for a landing on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. If successful, this will be the 107th booster landing for this particular drone ship and the 441st booster landing to date. SpaceX is also interested in recovering the payload fairings at the top of the Falcon 9 stack. They'll float down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. They'll be brought aboard a recovery vessel like the one pictured here from back in 2023 now. At the time, SpaceX was lifting up a fairing half that had flown for 13 times the record at that point. But again, SpaceX wants to certify the boosters and the fairings for up to 40 missions apiece. Where you see a little bit of venting from the strong back there, that's where the much more pronounced big vent will begin, coming up here in about 20 seconds. And there you see the start of the actual big vent itself. Again, this is SpaceX conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX still progressing towards a liftoff of its Falcon 9 rocket, coming up here this morning at 4:54 a.m. Eastern, 08:54 UTC. Just under 20 minutes to go. As we continue to watch the big vents here for about another minute and a half, want to note that the Vandenberg launched the Starlink 15-3 mission, which at one point was going to be Saturday afternoon and then looked like it was pivoting to Sunday afternoon, has now been called off indefinitely at this point. SpaceX has not stated the reason why it is standing down from that mission, but would not expect that to happen soon. The company has taken down the launch page for that mission, set to launch 26 Starlink satellites from Launch Complex 4 East there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Once that mission is put back on the schedule, of course, we'll be ready and waiting for live coverage of that mission. But for those who were curious as to why that has been taken off of the YouTube channel here as far as an upcoming live stream, that is the reason why, is because the launch is not going forward as planned, at least for the time being. Now just under 16:30 to go. You see the big vent has wrapped up, and now in just about 15 seconds, SpaceX will begin second stage liquid oxygen load. Today's mission will be SpaceX's 52nd Falcon 9 launch of the year so far. Also the 204th total orbital launch for SpaceX, or for Launch Complex 39A in total, the 110th for SpaceX from this pad. One more stat for you for now. This is the 99th Falcon 9 rocket set to lift off from this historic launch pad. Previous vehicles included 82 shuttle missions and, of course, 12 Saturn V launches from this site. Closing in on 14 and a half minutes before the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. I mentioned it is going to be flying for a 20th time, so let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the history of B-1078 before its next jaunt to space and back. Its flight history began, as is the case with a number of SpaceX's boosters, by lofting a crew of 4 on their way to the International Space Station. That was the Crew 6 mission back on March 2nd of 2023. The Dragon on this flight named Endeavour. When Endeavour returned from the International Space Station, it was a spectacular splashdown off the coast of, I believe it was just south of Daytona Beach in that pocket of Florida. Allowed for a really nice nighttime streak that we happened to capture on camera as it cruised by the vehicle assembly building. One of the more memorable nights here at the Kennedy Space Center for me. Launch of Crew 6 was followed up on April 28th by the O3B mPOWER Satellites 3 and 4 on behalf of one of SpaceX's oldest customers, SES. That was followed up by a string of 4 Starlink missions for this booster. We had Starlink 6-4 on June 4th, 6-8 on August 7th, 6-16 on September 16th, and 6-31 on December 3rd. That was followed up by the launch of the USSF 124 mission on February 14th, 2024. Back to Starlink land we go for a little bit. We had Starlink 6-46 on March 25th, Starlink 6-53 on April 23rd, 6-60 on May 28th, 10-2 on June 23rd, 10-6 on August 2nd. Then a series of satellites on behalf of AST Space Mobile, the 5 Bluebird satellites that launched on September 12th of last year. And then after the Bluebirds, it is Starlinks from here on out. We had Starlink 10-13 on October 30th, 6-76 on November 27th, 12-6 on December 31st. Coming into this year, 12-9 on February 8th, 12-16 on March 15th, and most recently, Starlink 6-72 on April 6th. And just 28 days after that brings us to today, where in just about 11.5 minutes, we'll see the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket one more time, lofting 29 Starlink satellites. About 10.5 minutes on the board here. Let's go ahead and continue our talk about the Falcon 9 rocket. This is the workhorse vehicle, of course, for SpaceX. To date, the company has launched 468 Starlink missions. This will be launch 469 coming up here in just about 10 minutes. Falcon 9 stands 70 meters or 229 feet in height with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the booster stage. Again, this is B1078, having now launched 19 times before. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back to the atmosphere, tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage. In that first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. It will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 29 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. As with the first stage, so goes the second stage, burning that same propellant mix, RP1 and LOX. Following the deployment of the 29 Starlink satellites today, there will be a third burn, a deorbit burn, helping to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere and burn up and eliminate creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings encapsulating the 29 Starlink satellites. Just under 8 minutes to go before they take off. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 fairing halves will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage booster lands on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. They gently splash down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Just under 7 minutes to go now. At this point, SpaceX is thermally conditioning the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster, running a little bit of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. Taking a look at the live stream here, see we've got a little more than 2,400 of you in here now. Appreciate you that are just joining us this early morning. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we have just 6 minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. Before we get to the point of launch, for those of you who are just joining us, I want to give you one last look at the trajectory here. So if you are in central or southern Florida, or in the area of the Bahamas or the Caribbean, you may get a good glimpse of this Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its flight today. Just under 6 minutes, the first stage RP-1 tank should be full as well now at this point. Again, the Falcon 9 rocket flying that southeasterly trajectory, following the path of the other missions that have been a part of Group 6, the Starlink constellation. First stage booster targeting a landing on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, a little more than 8 minutes into flight. You can just barely make out the American flag here in this shot. Adam and I were actually talking about the reason that the flag is still at half staff at this point in time.
Tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
Good call there from SpaceX. Just to close out this thought, the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Service is held on Sunday, May 4th. It is done in honor of firefighters who died in the line of duty. So, in accordance with Public Law 107-51, the flags set to be lowered to half staff over the course of today.
Back retract has started.
In observance of that service. So, for all of you wondering why the flags are lowered, I'll answer that question for you. As you're hearing, the process of strong back retract is now underway as the clamp arm's opening up beneath the payload fairings and the strong back pulling back a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Just under 3 minutes now, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call from SpaceX, confirming that fueling milestone. Less than half a minute away from the same being true on the Falcon 9's second stage. Seeing the release of water from the water tower just there to the left of the crew access tower. Normal at this point in the fueling process. Less than 2 minutes to go. Second stage LOX load should be complete as well.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
Good call there. The venting you're seeing now live on your screen, those are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX removes the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there.
Ground gas closeouts.
Good call from SpaceX. The Falcon 9 rocket now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. 1 minute to go.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with that call, we are now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch. Should be coming in just the next few seconds.
LD, go for launch.
And with that go for launch, we are now just about 20 seconds away from the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and on our Star Wars Day, 2, 1, punch it, Chewie. And liftoff of the Falcon 9, beginning the Starlink 6-84 mission. And we're now more than a minute into flight of this Falcon 9.
Is supersonic.
As we heard, the Falcon 9 supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound. Soon SpaceX will begin conditioning
Next
the
cue.
Merlin vacuum engine ahead of second stage ignition following stage separation. Should hear a call for that momentarily.
Engine chill has started.
Good call for engine chill. Coming up on a few events in fairly rapid succession, we'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, in just about 20 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation, and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairing should separate right about the 3-minute mark. There you see MECO. stage separation. And second stage engine start.
Nico.
Stage separation confirmed.
And vac ignition.
All good callouts, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Payload fairings should be jettisoned. Yep, you can see them just reflecting off of the glow of the Merlin vacuum engine in the big box.
Fairing separation confirmed.
There you see good views of the first stack of 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites, now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. As we approach the 4-minute mark in flight, the next big milestone that we're looking for with this mission is going to be the start of the entry burn on the first stage booster. That's when SpaceX will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories.
to begin to slow the vehicle down dramatically. Booster still climbing at this point in the flight. Just reaching about 110 kilometers in altitude. Looks like it's reaching its apogee at about 4.5 minutes into the mission. 111 kilometers topping off today. It'll soon begin making its descent towards the drone ship a short fall of gravitas. Now just about a minute away from the start of the entry burn in real time. Given the number of clouds that are hanging around the Space Coast today, we may or may not be able to catch the entry burn with our tracking cameras. We'll be on the hunt for it, but don't be surprised if we're not able to bring you those views today. The entry burn is set to begin in about 10 seconds in real time.
Stage 1 FTS
Entry burn is underway.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Little too cloudy to see the entry burn with our tracking cameras today. That's all right. We've got these good onboard cameras from SpaceX. Today's entry burn lasting about 20 seconds in duration.
Stage 1 entry burns shut down.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
Good call-outs all around. The flight termination system on the second stage no longer needed at this stage in flight. We're just about
Stage 1 transonic.
30 seconds away, based off the SpaceX timeline at the bottom of your screen, from the start of the first stage landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a 20th time, B-1078 has safely returned.
Seco. Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a call out for both SECO and a good nominal orbit insertion, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket will continue its coast phase at this point until T plus 53 minutes and 59 seconds. There will then be a brief 2-second burn of that upper stage engine to help circularize the orbit. Then the Starlink satellites, all 29 of them, set to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 8 seconds. As we get ready to close things out, let's go ahead and take a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Once again, this was the 20th flight of Falcon 9 Booster 1078. This was SpaceX's 469th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 52nd of 2025. This was the 409th Falcon Booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the 141st orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 110th orbital launch from SpaceX from Pad 39A, and the 204th overall orbital launch from this particular pad as well. Taking a look at the bar chart here, SpaceX has notched 52 missions so far, 2025. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 107th booster landing successfully on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. That marked the 352nd SpaceX drone ship landing and the 441st overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 38th orbital flight from Florida this year, the 56th launch from U.S. soil, the 61st from a U.S. rocket company, and the 93rd orbital launch attempt around the globe. 2 orbital failures on the year so far, and here is where our pie chart now stands. Did see a couple more items pop up in the live chat here, so let me go ahead, call those up before we close things down. Thanks to Derek Brown for a $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Derek. He says, I always enjoy the stream and the community. Thank you for the kind words. And a thanks as well to Tobe Wobe for gifting another 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity. And to our 5 newest channel members, welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't thanked Tobe already in the live chat, be sure to do so before you pop out of the live stream today. Once again, if you were not here when I mentioned it earlier, the Vandenberg launch has been called off for the time being. Don't have a clear indication of when that might come back into the loop, so be sure to head over to our website, spaceflightnow.com, for new updates on when SpaceX puts Starlink 15-3 back on the board. In the meantime, our next launch from here in Florida, we're looking forward to a flight from Pad 40, Starlink 6-93, looking to lift off on the evening of Tuesday, or actually tomorrow evening, Monday the 5th, with a window that opens up at 8:48 p.m. Eastern, 0048 UTC. And actually, a quick correction to that. The Pad 40 launch will be Tuesday, not Monday. So, got one more extra day to gear up for the next Falcon 9 launch. So, unfortunately, no Cinco de Mayo flight for SpaceX, but we'll have one coming up on the 6th instead. Want to thank our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for their support of this Falcon flight tonight. Once again, thanks to our photographers, Michael Kane and Adam Bernstein. You can find their images of this mission on our handle at spaceflightnow.com. And be sure to follow them on their handles as well. Michael is at MD Kane Jr., Adam at 8burn NYC. And we look forward to John coming back into the loop in the near future. I want to thank everyone for being with us for this Falcon 9 launch. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. We look forward to welcoming you back when SpaceX is next ready to launch, Tuesday at the earliest. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.